Before viewing video lessons, it is important to read the textbook using the learning guide as your turn-by-turn directions. Then use the learning guide to take organized notes in your own words with examples and pictures. Chapter 3, The Biological Bases of Behavior. In this chapter, we've been talking about the biological component of the biopsychosocial model of human behavior. Biologically, we focus on the nervous system and the endocrine system. In this video, we're going to be discussing the peripheral nervous system and the endocrine system. This is a continuation of our discussion of the organization of the nervous system. So as we discussed previously, the nervous system is made up of the central and the peripheral nervous system. We've already covered the central nervous system. Now we're going to focus on the peripheral. The peripheral nervous system is further divided into the somatic and the autonomic nervous systems. In the world of psychology, the autonomic nervous system is interesting. The somatic nervous system really doesn't get that much attention. So we're going to focus on the autonomic nervous system. The autonomic nervous system is further divided into two different divisions or modes of operation. The autonomic nervous system can either function in the sympathetic mode or the parasympathetic mode. Right now, your autonomic nervous system is most likely functioning in the parasympathetic mode. That means you should feel fairly relaxed. Your body is focused on conserving energy. If a tiger were to walk into the room, your autonomic nervous system would switch over very quickly to the sympathetic mode, which mobilizes resources in the fight or flight response. The autonomic nervous system generally functions on autopilot. This means that most of the functions controlled by the autonomic nervous system are things that happen automatically and without me making a decision for them to happen. So what we need to do is we need to look at what goes on in the body when you're in sympathetic versus parasympathetic mode. So right now, hopefully everybody is relaxed, conserving energy, and the parasympathetic division of the autonomic nervous system is governing the body. When this is the case, the body is conserving energy, the breathing is at a regular, steady, slow rate, the heart is beating slow and steady, your digestion is functioning properly, so you're salivating and things are moving through the digestive tract at a good pace. Another thing about the parasympathetic mode is your bladder is contracted, and that means that you're not peeing your pants right now. That's a good thing. Now the autonomic nervous system changes over to the sympathetic division or sympathetic mode if there is a perceived danger. So let's say a tiger walks into the room. Your autonomic nervous system would automatically, without your making it, turn on processes in the body designed to help you either fight or run away. This is the fight or flight response. So some things that would happen very quickly is unnecessary processes like digestion would come to a grinding halt. This means that you would notice that your salivation was inhibited. Salivation is the first process of digestion. I don't need to digest my cheeseburger if I'm being eaten by a tiger. I can be sick later, I can have indigestion later, so I'm going to stop digestion. If you're afraid of public speaking, which is a pretty common fear, you may notice that you get cotton mouth or a very dry mouth. That's a sign of the fight or flight response. The digestive process within the body, the stomach, the intestines, also slows down. That's why sometimes you get that butterflies in your stomach feeling, and sometimes people even get so nervous that they are nauseous and even vomit. So we're going to take some energy away from digestion and also immune system responses, and we're going to devote it to things that I need for a very physical response to the tiger, fighting or running away. That means that my respiration rate is going to increase. My heart rate's going to increase, sometimes to the point where it feels like it's going to bounce right out of my chest. My muscles are going to tense up. I'm going to be ready to fight or run away. Some other things that people sometimes will notice when they're in fight or flight response mode is they'll start sweating. Sometimes people will describe it as a cold sweat. They'll kind of break out in a clammy cold sweat. People can also have goosebumps or the hair raised up on their arms. If you have a dog or a cat, you've seen this process in them. When they encounter another dog or cat that they don't like, the hair on their back will stand straight up. And of course, we need to take some energy away from some muscles that don't need to be contracted right now. So another thing that happens in fight or flight response mode is the bladder relaxes. In really extreme cases, the anus can also relax so that you can become so scared that you can literally pee and poop your pants. This is where the expression scared shitless comes from. We're going to talk more about this conservation versus mobilization modes in the chapter on stress and health. So before we leave the nervous system, a quick review. The nervous system is comprised of the central and the peripheral nervous system. The central nervous system contains the brain and spinal cord. The brain is also further divided down into the forebrain, midbrain, and hindbrain. And each one of those parts of the brain is then further divided down to even smaller structures. The peripheral nervous system is made up of all of the other nerves in the body. It's divided into the somatic nervous system, with nerves that carry signals up to the brain and then back down to the body where we can tell the body what to do. And the autonomic nervous system that largely functions on automatic pilot without me thinking about it. The autonomic nervous system can either function in parasympathetic mode or sympathetic mode. Now that we've finished the endocrine system, or the nervous system, we're going to go on to talk about the endocrine system. The endocrine system is another way that our body communicates. The endocrine system uses chemicals to communicate just like the nervous system, only the endocrine chemicals are called hormones, while the nervous system chemicals were called neurotransmitters. Another difference between the endocrine system and the nervous system is in the nervous system, the neurotransmitters travel a very short distance across the synapse to send those messages. For the endocrine system, the hormones or chemical messengers are pumped into the bloodstream. This carries those chemicals throughout the body and basically sends sort of a global message to the entire body, and the entire body can then respond. There are several different glands in the endocrine system. We're going to just highlight a few. Some of these will come up again later on in the semester. The first one is the pituitary gland. There's actually two glands of the endocrine system in the skull near the brain. One is the pituitary gland, the other is the pineal gland. We'll talk about the pineal gland in chapter 5 when we talk about sleep. But the pituitary gland is up here, right next to the hypothalamus. It's also controlled by the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus tells the pituitary gland information it needs to control the rest of the endocrine system. So the pituitary gland is also called the master gland because it can send hormones to other glands to change their function. The other thing the pituitary gland does is it secretes growth hormone. And growth hormone, of course, helped you to grow when you were a kid, but now that you're an adult and you've stopped growing, it also helps in repair of the body. The next set of glands that are interesting to us are the thyroid glands. They're sort of in the lower part of your throat. Sometimes when you go to the doctor, you may notice that they kind of feel your throat and kind of squish on it a little bit. And sometimes what they're doing there with that is they're actually checking your thyroid to see if it feels unusual or enlarged. Now the thyroid secretes hormones that regulate the metabolic rate, or the rate at which we use up our energy. Now that may not sound very interesting to psychologists, but it turns out that if you have too high of a metabolic rate, you have too much thyroid hormones, you can feel anxious. And when you go to see the doctor, you will present to that professional like somebody who has an anxiety disorder. But in this case, it's totally caused by a malfunction in the thyroid gland. You can also have a really low metabolic rate and not enough thyroid hormones. And when this happens, you feel depressed and apathetic. You go to see the doctor, you will present to them just like somebody who has major depressive disorder. Another gland that's interesting to us is the adrenal gland. It sits down by the liver. And this particular gland helps us to metabolize energy, particularly with salt and carbohydrates. And it plays a big role in that fight or flight response we just talked about. We'll discuss that more in the chapter on stress and health. A couple of other glands I just want to mention. One is the pancreas. If you know someone or maybe yourself have diabetes or problems with things like hypoglycemia, then you probably have a problem with your pancreas. That's where we secrete hormones that help us to metabolize sugars. One of the interesting things about this is if your blood sugar is off, it can have a profound impact on your behavior, and you will appear drunk or intoxicated. If somebody has a problem with blood sugar levels and they're acting that way, it's actually a sign of a medical emergency, and they need to go to the ER right away because they could die. The last set of glands that we want to talk about are the gonads. Hopefully you only have one set of gonads. This poor individual has two. If you're female, you have ovaries and you have placenta if you're pregnant, and these can secrete the female hormones like estrogen and progesterone. If you are male, then you have testes, and the testes secrete testosterone. And these hormones have been found to have some influence on behavior as well.